Cheers, my little GGs. Not quite the right beer, but it's beer. Because tonight we're going Indian. Okay? So really this ought to be something like Kingfish beer, or I could tell you a story about Kingfish beer. Might do later. Or Tarka beer or something like that. But I've just got ordinary English beer. Right? So tonight we are making a traditional Indian main course. I hesitate to say curry because curry, or what we associate with curry, is a British thing. It's not saying that the dishes are necessarily all invented, because tonight isn't a British curry, Indian curry. But in India, curry really just refers to the sauce or the gravy. Okay, the British talk about curries, you know, all the hot meals like vindaloos, all this, that and the other. Now many of the dishes that you have in an Indian restaurant were invented by the British. They're not proper Indian meals. But tonight we're having a Dhansak. Now this is going to be a traditional Dhansak, but traditionally Dhansak is with mutton or goat. The wife likes a prawn Dhansak, so we're adding prawns instead of meat, but the rest of it is all authentic, and so you can't quite see it all. We've got a whole array of ingredients here, and so we're going to go through them as we use them. Lots of spices, lentils, vegetables and everything. Alright, so tonight's delight, prawn Dhansak. Okay, so the key to the Dhansak are 4 types of lentils. Now, first thing this morning, I weighed out the quantities, rinsed them, and they've been soaking. If you want, you can soak them the day overnight, but I started soaking these this morning. So we have here some, I've got a little label so I don't know, I forget which one's which. We've got there some yellow split peas, and I've got 220 grams of them. Okay, and in a bit what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain them all off and we'll chuck them in the pan. Alright, so I've got yellow split peas, 220 grams. They soak up a lot of the water. Okay, the bowl wasn't anywhere near that before I started. Right, we've got 95 grams of chickpeas. Okay, they don't seem to soak up much. Okay, I've got some red lentils. I've got 100 grams of them. Okay, they soaked up a little bit. You're getting a soak card, yeah. And then we've got some moong dhal, which are split dried mung beans. They look just like yellow lentils. Right. Now I've got 115 grams of them. Now if you haven't got all the varieties that you should have, you can substitute what ones you do have in its place. Alright? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sieve these all off and chuck them all together in the pan. Alright? Okay, so that's all my lentils in there together, and now I've just put some water in just to cover them, and I'm just going to give a generous pinch of salt. Now if you were using meat, particularly lamb and goat, you would chop it up now into like chunks, and that goes in there now. But we don't want to overcook the prawns, because this is just the start of quite a long cook. Right? Not as long as some of the things we've cooked, but traditionally it does take a long time. Okay, so we're going to put the prawns in at a later stage, but the meat will go in now. Alright, and now all we're going to do is we're going to turn the heat on and bring it up to the boil. Okay, but I'm going to transfer this to the back because you can't see what I'm doing here. Alright, so I'm just going to put it at the back, bring it up to the boil, and when it's up to the boil, we turn it down to a simmer, put the lid on, and we simmer it for about 15 minutes. Alright, so I'm going to set that off, and then we'll start preparing the rest of it, and I'll tell you a little bit about Dhansak. Alright, so that's just gone on to boil. Okay, well, not to boil, we put the heat on. Alright, now as we said, this is a traditional Indian dish, and in fact it has origins in Persia. This comes from the Parsi, or Parsi, don't be nice say it, region, or community, sorry, if you like. And these were people who came from Persia after the Arabs had effectively taken over the country, and they moved into Western India and settled there and brought with them their style of cooking. So they use a lot of spices, very similar to the Indian garam masala, but their version of it, the Dhansak masala, tends to be a lot more aromatic, whereas the Indians are perhaps a little bit more spice. These are a little bit more aromatic, but there's similar ones. Now I've got them all laid out here, and we'll go through them when we come to do that bit. But also vegetables go in there. So we're going to put some potato. Probably won't use that whole potato. An aubergine. We will use the whole aubergine. We would usually use some pumpkin, not parsnip. Now I couldn't get a pumpkin, all right. So I've got tinned pumpkin, all right. That'll do. Onions, a lot of onions. Okay, we've got 6 onions here. We're going to split them 4 and 2. We've got a awful lot of garlic. There's 2 whole bowls of garlic worth there. And I've got some sweet potato. Again, we won't put all that sweet potato in. We've got some ghee. We've obviously got our prawns. And then we've got some chillies, some coriander, some spinach, and we've unfortunately got a dried mint because we couldn't get any mint from the supermarket. And I think, apart from the spices, that's about it. So, what's going to go in there once that's had its 15-minute boil is the vegetables. Also tomatoes. 2 tomatoes. We're not putting tomatoes in, we're putting passata in, alright? So we'll put the equivalent of that in there. Like I say, potato, aubergine, and sweet potato, and then some onion. So I'm just going to get that prepared, okay? And then we'll chuck that all in when that's at its cooking time. Okay, so I've chopped up about half that potato because that was a big baking potato. We just want a potato. I did about 1/3 of the sweet potato, okay? Sometimes you would use sweet potato instead of potato, all right? But essentially you could use whatever vegetables are there, okay? I chopped up 2 of the onions, so the other 4 we're keeping back for Ron, all right, for later. I've got my pumpkin ready, the spinach, and I've got my passata ready. So the only reason I haven't cut up my aubergine, for those of you who've noticed it's not cut up yet, is this oxidises very quickly. It's like going black, and we don't want it doing that. So once that's ready to go in, I'll just chop it up then. Now, I've got a label on that. At the end of the day, this is going, and by the way, we chop it up with skin on and everything. This is all going to get blitzed. We're going to puree it. So it's up to you how fine you want to chop it up. Obviously, the smaller you chop it, the quicker it'll cook. But when that does go in there, it will be a 30-minute cook. All right. So, well, if you want, you can put it in a food processor. I'm going to attempt to do it with a hand blender, which I discovered I had. I thought my hand blender broke. Well, it did, but apparently we bought another one and I've forgotten. So I've got that now. This big bastard here. All right. That looks a little bit naughty, doesn't it? So we're gonna blitz it with that, and if that don't work, I'll just shove it in the food processor and blitz it that way. So, prawn Dhansak. Well, Dhansak, like I said, is this traditional thing. It came over with the Parsi community, and it's traditionally made on Sundays for Sunday. Okay, because it does take a long time to cook. Now, some people argue you can't cook it in the time we're going to cook it unless you have a pressure cooker. All right, but we are. Okay, but obviously in your traditional Indian homes, with the tools they had to hand, this could take all day to cook this. So they would traditionally have this on a Sunday. Oh, my gimbal had a funny 5 minutes. All right. So as I was saying, this is a meal that is traditionally had on the 4th day after the death of a close member of the family or loved one. Okay, because for 3 days after the death of someone, no meat is allowed. So this was a dish that would be cooked and eaten on the 4th day because it's got meat in it. Okay. Now that's not to say it's only ever eaten because of funerals as such or death, but because of the association with this is the meal we broke our fast from the the death fast, if you like, isn't served up at things like weddings or banquets or anything like that because of the association with death. Doesn't stop them eating it any other time they wanted, it's just felt not quite right to do it at a time of celebration. So I'm going to pause this, right? Check my beer's all right. I'm still waiting on that to cook, so we'll wait till that's ready for the ingredients to go in. Okay, so just had 15 minutes. Now be careful, because it did almost catch me out. It does all froth up, okay? It does after a while settle down. I've just moved it off the heat for the minute. So I've chopped on that aubergine and literally this stuff starts going brown straight away. I've also roughly chopped the spinach. So I had a whole aubergine and I've had 50 grams of spinach. So that goes in there, okay? And then, like I said, I chopped 2 of them onions, okay? I chopped potato and I chopped sweet potato. And was it? I think that was it. So in that goes, all right? This is making a lot, but Dhansak, by the way. I mean, this is going to get reduced down once we puree it. We're putting in the pumpkin, okay? And we're going to add, now this is where if you were going to use whole tomatoes, use 2 tomatoes. Ew, starts going everywhere. Essentially you can add as much of this as you fancy, okay? Making a right bloody mess of that. There's my cloth. There's my cloth. So I'm going to give that a bit of a mix in, but as you can see, it's going to need some more water. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and give it a little bit of a mix around, okay, and then I'll just top it up with a bit of water, and then it's going back on the heat, and we're going to heat it, or cook it rather, for 30 minutes. Okay, we've had the 15 minutes. Now the meat would still be in here. At the end of the 30 minutes, if you were using meat, you would remove the meat, which is going to be easier said than done when you look at how chunky all this is, right? But like I said, we're having prawns, we're not overcooking the prawns, so we're not putting them in yet. I'm probably not going to need an awful lot of moisture, extra water, okay? But I will just add a little bit in there, and we'll put the lid back on, keep an eye on it. You might want a bit of a stir every now and again, and like I say, we're now going to cook that 30 minutes. Okay. Okay, so while that's cooking, okay, we're going to prepare what's going in next. Okay, so we've got 4 onions left over. They need to be thinly sliced. Okay, you're going to want some chillies. Now they would normally have 6 green chillies in it, we're putting 3, and we're going to put about 3 dried red Kashmiri chillies. All right, like I said, 2 whole bulbs of garlic peeled. All right, the onion is actually going to be cooked in ghee. Okay, if you haven't got a ghee, you can use oil, but you should use ghee. All right, up to 3 tablespoons of ghee, but that's up to you. We can brown the onions, then we'll take them out of the pan, and again, some of them will go into that, some will go as a garnish at the end. Okay. Now we have 2 types of spice mixtures, 2 types of masala. So when I said to you earlier about a garam masala, this has a dry masala and a blended masala. Okay. I mean, ultimately they're all going in together, right? But the dry one is just really all the ground spices. The blended one, you're going to need a blender for that you can put, you know, wettish stuff in it, because that's where the chilies and that are going in. Okay, so that's what you're going to need. I think that's about it then. We're sort of like just getting to assemble that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice up these onions thinly, okay, and then I'll come back to you for the next bit. Okay, so my onions are sliced, okay, so we're now going to start assembling the two different masalas. But before we do, if you remember, we put potato in there, pumpkin in there, tomato in there. We're also going to be putting, oh, sweet potato, and we also, well no, I haven't said that, not sweet potato. So tomato, pumpkin and potato, and we've got fenugreek, which we haven't put in there yet, but we will later. Actually, at the time the parsley came to India with the Dhansak, those vegetables, if you like, were unheard of because they came from America. So it wasn't until really the 16th century when the Portuguese, who traded with the Spanish, brought those sort of things over. So those vegetables then got introduced in the 16th century. Prior to that, they used whatever vegetables they had to hand, and again, they still do. Okay. Essentially, each household has its own secret recipe for Dhansak, which they pass down the family. Now, this is boiling away well in here. Okay. It's getting more liquid as you'd expect as some of that stuff cooks. Now, what we're going to do first off is we're going to put together our dry masala. Now, our dry masala has ground coriander, 1 tablespoon. It has 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. It has some turmeric, 2 teaspoons of turmeric. What's the next thing? Half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Half a teaspoon of ground cardamom. I didn't bother getting the little seeds out, I just blitzed the whole lot, so there's sort of like bits of the husk, if you like, in there, but who cares. Alright, and then half a teaspoon of black pepper, ground black pepper, and then half a teaspoon of black mustard seed. Let's turn that around and put it over that side, make a nice little colourful pattern. Okay, and then we've got 1/4 teaspoon of ground fenugreek leaves. Actually, these are seeds, going to be leaves. Right, so they're going in there. And then finally, in that mixture, we've got 1/4 teaspoon of ground up cloves. All right, so they're the spices that are going to make up the dry masala. Like I say, it all goes in the same pot ultimately. All right. So, just going to look at this because this is steaming away an awful lot here. Oh, it's boiling away. I might have to move that onto the smaller heat. I might do that when I'm not talking to you, because that's bubbling away quite well and it's quite near the top. So that's the dry masala. Now, this Dhansak, like I said, you could use alternative vegetables, but essentially it is a Parsi, an Iranian way, a Persian way of cooking using lentils and vegetables. Okay, so the 4 types of lentils, but you can substitute other ones. Vegetables, you can substitute other ones depending what you've got. All right, but the spice mixture is like what you're meant to have. All right, so I'm getting a bit. That's steaming well, isn't it? I'll just say I'm getting a bit parched, so I'm going to have another beer. Okay, so we're now going to make the blended masala. Now, for the blended masala, like I said, we want a shed load of cloves of garlic. So there's about 10. Okay, what do I want next? Right. We then want about how much is it? About a tablespoon of freshly ground ginger. So I've got my frozen ginger as normal. And I'm just going to grate that into there. Now, You're going to want some hot water, about 60 mils. A little bit more. Okay, now you want your chillies. Now if you want to go the whole hog, you can have 6. I'm putting 3 in. Okay, we want some dried chillies. Okay, I'm going to put 3 of them in. 1, which I'm running out of these, I have to get some more. 2, notice I'm not worrying about whether I take seeds out or not. They're all going in there. On there. So what else goes in there? So we've got the chillies, ginger, garlic, mint. Now if you've got fresh mint, you want about 10 grams of fresh mint, and then 10 grams, where is it gone, of coriander. Okay, so I'm putting that in there. There we go. And then just cover that with about 60 odd mils of warm water, hot water. And then we're just going to blitz this into a paste. And that's noisy, so I'm going to turn this off. I made a fatal mistake. I know I didn't handle them chillies very long, but I sort of like wipe my mouth and whoop, my lips are stinging. So there's my blended masala paste in there. Okay, so let's move my beer over here. So we've got our 2 masala blends, dry and wet if you like. We've got our sliced onions, we've got our ghee, and we've got our prawns, and that's all that's left. Okay, now that's still got a little longer to cook. Okay, and then we'll be blending it all. Pardon me, we might not use all of that sauce, all right, because there's quite a lot of sauce there. Given that we've got prawns, you know, we don't want to go fishing for prawns, do we? This Dhansak, just to bring you up more as to how it is that, given that this is a traditional Indian dish, unlike a lot of the dishes, here we go, and we get steamed out again. Good for the skin. Good for the skin. Cleanse the pores. Right. Many, like I said, many of the dishes. When again then? Many of the dishes in Indian restaurant were a British invention. This one wasn't. So how did it end up on a British menu? Well, quite simply, because during the 19th century, I don't know what's going on with this bloody thing tonight. Okay, it keeps suddenly flipping to landscape mode, and unfortunately, landscape mode. Actually, some people said to me I'd get more viewers on YouTube if I'd filmed it in landscape. Apparently, do it vertical, that's a vlogging. That's what people expect to see on their phones. They don't like that, so I was told if you did it portrait, landscape, you'll get more subscribers, more viewers. By the way, subscribe and at least like it. I know some of you don't even watch them. I know. Anyway, I don't do it portrait landscape simply because you wouldn't get to see my head, or you get to see my head, you wouldn't get to see what's going on down here. Anyway, I was trying to tell you why it was on the British menu, okay, for this thing rebound. So Karachi and Bombay were becoming, you know, like big meccas of industry, and so these Parsi were a bit, you know, they were like a bit streetwise, and they set up little corner stalls selling teas, biscuits, and Dhansak, and so it became very popular amongst the working community. Now, then of course, we started having trade links with things like China and that, so that brought in more people, and then we had the formation of the East India Company and the British taking over India. So of course, the Parsi were a little bit, you know, they were a little bit wise, and they said, what we need to do is start speaking English, and then we can sell to the English. So that's what they started doing. They also got into shipping, made lots of money, but as a result, the British came accustomed to some of the Parsi dishes, such as Dhansak. And then when the British started setting up their little colonial homes, they said to them, do you want to come be my butler? So of course they did. And so they would start cooking things like Dhansak in these colonial homes. And as a result, It then moved to England. When everybody started coming back to England, they brought these dishes with them. So that's why you will see this dish on a British Indian restaurant menu, because it is an authentic Indian menu, dish, albeit sort of a mix of Indian and Parsi, but it's not an invented one like a lot of the dishes. Actually, I'm going to tell you about a story about India when I went to India. I haven't told you my kingfisher story yet. But anyway, this is almost ready. I might put an apron on before I start blending it. Alright? It's getting hot in here. I keep opening the door, but I have to shut it for when the wife comes down. She puts the telly on. I might have to open the door again and get a bit of breather. Right, so this is where we now transfer this to a food processor, or you can use a blender like I'm going to do, and we want to turn it into a mush. Okay, so obviously because I'm doing this by hand, as it were, this will take a little bit longer than doing a food processor, but I decided I didn't want to use a food processor all messy. So I'm just going to, see, I told you that's why I put an apron on, lifted a bit too soon, right? So I'm just going to go through and turn this into a nice smooth puree. So once you have finished blending it, when it resembles baby poo, essentially, one way of telling it is when you can't see any of the black of the aubergine, you know you've blitzed everything. Right, so I think I'm just about there now. A few little lumps I can see, but they don't really matter, does it? Right, so I'm now just going to sort of sort this out. Oh, look, I even got out the wall up there. Got to get that cleaned up. And then we'll start making the next bit. So we're about 30 minutes off eating. Well, 40 minutes by the time we've got a bit of prep in there. Right, okay, so that's the vegetable puree all done. Actually, I kept finding chickpeas that hadn't gone. So now we're going to have some ghee. And we want from 1 to 3 tablespoons of ghee. Okay, I'm just going to put whatever's left in that tin. Oh, I've got some more. Okay. And we're just going to bring that up to temperature, melt it down, and then what we do is we take them onions, those 4 thinly sliced onions, and we're just going to brown them off in there. So it's quite a little slow cookery, okay, slow cooking process. We want to cook through, we want to brown it off, okay, and according to the official recipe, when they're giving off a pleasant aroma, which, like I've told you before, I can't smell anyway. So nothing to do with COVID. I have nothing to smell. So I have no bloody idea. Okay. Actually, I did notice I sliced these onions. They didn't make me cry this time. Perhaps I'm just becoming hardened to everything that's going on. All right. And the more observant you may notice, I'm obviously on a different beer because this one's darker. I like this beer actually. It's not one of my specials, not one of my tiny rebels. Won't payday and I'll buy some more. So I'm going to melt that down. Oh, bloody thing's in right again. You didn't tell me again, did you? So melt that down, and then we're just going to shove them in there and cook them through. So if we'd have put meat in, but remember before we blitz that, we'd have removed the meat. That would have been fun. Remove the meat, okay, and that will go in later. But because we're doing prawns, we're going to be putting the prawns in when we start assembling the final dish. So once we've done the onions, we're removing the onions. We're then going to cook off the spice mix with the 2 spice mixes. Then we chuck in that vegetable puree. We put in back in the meat, or we put in our prawns at that stage. We put in half the onions, keep the other half, and then we just cook that for another half hour, and then hopefully we'll be ready to eat. I'm getting a bit hungry now. But I blame the wife. I told her I was going to start this one early. She went out, didn't come back till late, so it's her fault for late. So she's hungry, tough. Alright. Actually, I was asked just before I'll just sign off for this little episode. I was asked, is it vegetarian? Well, given that I'm putting meat in there yet, that could be a vegetarian dish. Dhansak is not a vegetarian dish because it traditionally had meat in it, lamb, mutton or goat. But what I've made so far, because I'm using prawns, there's nothing gone in there yet. So if you wanted, you could have some baby food, right? A baby food Dhansak. Or you could put, I don't know, tofu or something in it if you wanted a vegetarian option. Right? Not traditional, but you could if you wanted. Well, obviously once we start cooking it in ghee, we've just lost part of that. Well, we've certainly lost vegan. I don't know, vegetarians eat ghee? Don't know, to be honest. This bloody thing. Anyway, the ghee's melted, so I'm going to put in my onion. Okay, and like I say, we're just going to slowly cook that. We want to brown that off. And I was going to tell you a couple of stories. One about Kingfisher beer, and the other about my trip to India. Okay, quite a few years ago now. We're talking about authentic meals. We're talking about authentic Indian meals, and how a lot of the British meals aren't authentic. Anyway, it was a small group of us. We'd gone tiger hunting, not as in shooting with camera. And there were 6 of us in this group, and one couple, they were quite like, oh, we do this all the time, travel, and and if we're not happy, we complain, and we've got various things from it. But anyway, they insisted they loved India. Never been to India before, like us. Loved India, and they loved Indian meals, and their favourite was butter chicken. So most of the evenings or days when we did eat out, it was all sort of pretty much a set menu. In fact, it didn't matter where we went. We went North India, Central India. Everywhere we went, what they served us pretty much seemed the same no matter where we were. It was some sort of sauce, curry, usually with bones in it. There was usually more bone than meat. But anyway, that's an aside. So we didn't get a lot of choice when we were travelling about. But this couple used to say about, they really love butter chicken. Butter chicken is their favourite Indian dish. So anyway, the very last night in Mumbai, we got put up in a hotel, proper hotel. Okay, prior to that they weren't great hotels. They were alright, but this was a proper hotel. We sat in a restaurant and we basically picked from a menu, so we could have what we wanted. And they said, right, I'm having butter chicken because that's our favourite. So they ordered butter chicken, which wasn't on the menu. It was an Indian dish. And out it came. What's this? Didn't you order butter chicken? Yes, I ordered butter chicken. What's this? That's the butter chicken. No, it's not. Sorry, yes, that's the butter chicken. You ordered butter chicken. This is not butter chicken. We love butter chicken. We have butter chicken all the time. We know what butter chicken should be like. This isn't butter chicken. You're in bloody India. You're having a meal that's been cooked in a proper Indian restaurant in India. And they're complaining because it wasn't what they thought it was. There you go. So anyway, like I said, these onions, we're just going to brown these. And then we're going to remove them from the pan. We'll keep the ghee behind. If we end up taking out too much ghee, because we're going to cook our spices, we'll add a little bit of ghee. Alright? So that's my story about someone who's so used to eating a British Indian meal, failed to understand they aren't necessarily over here exactly what they are over there. How on earth you can tell the Indians they can't cook their own dishes properly, I don't really know, but there you go. Right, so I'm just going to carry on tossing these. There you go, tossing in again. That had to be done, didn't it? So, most important thing, we've moved on to the wine. This is the wine we opened last night and then finished off. So on the walnut. Oh, sorry. Back to Dhansak. So the onion's cooked through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the onion, okay, all of it, and trying to leave behind most of the ghee, okay. So I'm just going to get that all out of there. If I think it needs a little bit more ghee, I'll add a little bit of ghee, melt it down, and then we'll start cooking the spices. Okay, so we've got enough ghee left in there. So what I do now is I tip in all them dry spice ingredients, okay, and we then also add the wet spice. And what we're going to do, we're just going to cook it through, okay. We're just going to make sure we get all this out of here. We're then just going to cook it through till it starts getting cooked and aromatic. Like I said, I have bloody no idea when that will happen, but there you go. So, I'm just going to carry on getting all that crap out there and I'll come back. Well, as I said, the idea was to cook this spice blends until it was cooked and you've got a nice pleasant aroma. Her Majesty's next door, well I say next door, not next door house, in the room next door, watching something on telly about paying £18,000 a night for a suite in an hotel. 18,000? Some people don't earn that in a year. Anyway, enough of the politics. She said, oh, I can smell that. So she can actually smell it. So it's obviously giving off a pleasant aroma. So what we're going to now do is I'm going to take them onions and any of the ghee that's drained off, and I'm putting half of those onions back in there with some of the ghee, okay. She'll put just over half of the onions in there. That's probably going to make a mess. I'm just going to put that over the drain board. Just going to mix that through, and then I'm going to add in my prawns. Now, if you cook the meat and you removed it, you put the meat back in at this stage. But because these are prawns and we don't want to overcook them, they're going in now. Okay, so I'm just going to mix them in. Where did that go? I'm sure something went flying somewhere. I'm going to right over there. No, it didn't. That's something else. So I'm just mixing that in, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our Dhansak puree and we're going to add some of that back in. All right. So I'm just going to mix in the Dhansak puree. Right, so we've got it all blended in, okay. Now, I don't normally have a Dhansak when I go to the Indian. I like the old, what's the name, tandoori chicken, or a tandoori mixed grill. The wife has Dhansak, and she's telling me this is a little bit thicker than it would normally be. If it's not to your liking, if it's too thick, she's quite happy with it like this. If you want, then just add some boiling water, thin it down. It's entirely up to you. So if you were adding the meat back at this stage, you would give it anything from 20 to 30 minutes just to cook everything through. Make sure your meat's cooked. Because these are prawns, they won't take so long. Obviously we want to make sure the prawns are cooked, so probably won't take that long. All right, so I've set a timer for 20 minutes, but I will be keeping my eye on it, and then when it's ready we'll be serving it up, and next one will be the final tasting. Probably blow me bloody head off amount of chilli in this, but there you go. This is a traditional Indian prawn Dhansak, with part, in fact you should have prawns in it, you should have lamb or goat, but cooked with all the appropriate spices according to the Persian recipes, if you like. So next time I catch you, we'll be trying it out. Okay, so cooking time up. So we then sprinkle the remaining onions over the top. There's a little bit of garnish. Like I say, I'll have to ask what the wife thinks. Oh, you don't get the initial kick from the chilli that I thought you would, but it does come through afterwards. Actually, I just found a chickpea, so obviously wasn't as smooth as it should have been. There's a prawn. Let's get a prawn. So it's a nice, I was going to say creamy, smooth puree of lentils and vegetables. The hit from all the spices and obviously the prawns. So there we go. There's our authentic Parsi prawn Dhansak. Well, apart from the fact it shouldn't be prawn.